In our session today, we're going to be discussing Active Directory Rights Management Services. The Active Directory Rights Management Service is an information protection technology that is designed to minimize the possibility of data leakage. By data leakage, we mean that we don't want anyone within the organization or anyone outside the organization to be able to access any information that they are not authorized to access. Active Directory Rights Management Services works with all of Microsoft products, including the Microsoft Office suite. For example, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Access, Microsoft Excel. Also works with Exchange Server and SharePoint Server. If you have Active Directory Rights Management installed in your organization, you're going to be able to protect documents for your users, any document that they send as email messages. And what is going to happen is that even if someone sent a message and they sent it to the wrong person by mistake, and that document is protected by Active Directory Rights Management Service, the person that accidentally opened the mail is not going to be able to read that mail. To configure rights management services, we're going to be using a domain controller, a member server, and a client machine. The first thing that we want to do is to log into the domain controller and create the users that we will need and the groups. We can either use Active Directory users and computers to do that, or we could use Active Directory Administrative Center. We're going to do Active Directory users and computers. And the first thing that we want to do is within the ADRMS domain, we want to create an organizational unit. So we go to New Organizational Unit. And here we want to type the name of the organizational unit. And click on OK. Then we want to go into the service accounts group, and we want to create the users in the service accounts group. So we're going to say new user, and we will create the users that we want. The first user that we want is actually the user for the service account. We're going to need a service account, and this account should not be given any extra privileges, just a normal service account. No last name, just a service account. We're going to use the same name for the user logon that we use for the service account. Click on Next. and we want to use the password. Remember, this is just an ordinary service account. This is not a managed service account, but we can use a managed service account here. We then want to make sure that the password never expires and user cannot change password. Finish. Next thing we want to do is to create a global security group in the user's container. So we're going to right click on users, click on new, and we're typing the security group. And this group is going to be a super users group. We are going to need to set an email address for this group. Say OK, click on OK. And we can see the group there. We're going to the properties of the group to set the email address. The good thing about Active Directory Rights Management, or rather Active Directory Administration Center, is that the email address is in the same place, the same page with all the other objects that you create. And you don't have to go to a second tab like you have to in Active Directory users and computers. Once that email address is in, then we want to click on OK. And now we have to create another security group called Executive. So we're going to do that. The new group. And this group is going to be called Executives. And we also have to set an email address for this group. So we're going to the properties of the tab. And we're going to go to the properties. We actually have to click off the other object that's selected above. You can see two objects selected. No, it's not. That's not right. We have to, if we don't select the one at the top, then we're not going to get what we need. There you go. Right click, get to the email address box and type the email address. The next thing that we're going to have to do here is to add two user accounts so that we can actually test. And we're going to put those accounts in the executive group. We're going to look for the executive group. And we're going to add 2 email accounts to the executive group. We have to create the emails first, or rather we have to create the users first and then add them to the executive group. We're creating the first email, giving the logon name. And the password information. Again, here we have to make sure that only one object is selected. If not, we're not going to get the tab we want in the property box. Here we're going to type the email address of the first user. Next, we have to go and create that second user and put him in the executive group. Both of the users have to be members of the executive group. Next, type the password and then confirm the password. Password never expires. And finish. Now we have to add those members to the executive group. We're trying not to forget that. We're still typing in the email address of the second user. Here we go. Executive group. We're going to right click on the executive group. Then we're going to click on properties. And we want to click on members and we want to add those 2 users that we just created to the executives group. Okay. And we want to check what we want to do now is to do the DNS. We want to actually go into DNS. We're going into the zone and we want to add the host record for the Active Directory Rights Management Server. That's a server that we will be installing Active Directory Rights Management on. And we need to add the host record. So we're typing the IP address of that server in order to create the host record. When that is completed, when we're completed here, then we are going to install Active Directory Rights Management on the member server in our organization. So now here we are logging into the server that we want to install Active Directory Rights Management on. And we're going to do the installation. And we want to go to add roles. Next on the screen, on the select installation type. Then we want to select the server, the name of the server. And we want to look for the role Active Directory Rights Management. Add features. And click on Next. Click on Next a second time to take some time to remind us the purpose of the Active Directory Rights Management is to protect the data within our organization. It acts something like a PDF that's locked down. You can't copy, you can't paste, you can only view. Now we want to go ahead and click Next. And we are installing the Active Directory Rights Management service. And again, we're explaining to you how it helps to protect your system. Click on Next and Install. And the installation is going through. We're going to pause. Installation has succeeded. We're going to close the dialog box. And then we have to do the post installation where we actually install the cluster. All right, we can see that we are starting the configuration of Active Directory Rights Management after the installation. We want to click on Next. And we want to create the cluster. At this point, we want to use the Windows internal database and not SQL. So we're going to click Next. And at this point, we have to specify the service account that we had created. So I'm going to try to type in the service account and the password for that account because that's needed for the configuration. Typing the password. And say OK. Next, to continue, I want to choose the first option there. And we want to type the password for the cluster. You have to create a password. Confirming the password. And we're going to select the default website. That's the default website for Internet Information Services. Then we want to type the URL of the cluster. We're not going to use encrypted, so we're going to click on use unencrypted. And we're actually going to type the URL for the cluster. Click on next at this point. After we have changed the name of the license server, this is the license certificate. We can choose the name that we want. And we want to click on next, and we want to register the service connection point now. So we leave that at default and click on next. And we can see that we need there to confirm the installation and then install. You can see the installation going through. And we're told that we need to restart or sign out and sign in before we access Active Directory Rights Management Services. So we will need to do that before we continue. So you can see us signing out, and we're going to sign back in again. And when we sign back in, what we need to do is to go and configure Internet Information Services. So we're signing back in to the Active Directory Rights Management Server. Remember the first server, what we did was created all the groups that we needed. And we also configured the resource record in DNS. And now we need to go into Internet Information Services. Anonymous authentication on the default website. So we want to expand sites, default website, and then we are going to look for the IIS authentication tab and enable it. So we click on authenticate and we click on anonymous authentication and then we click on enable. And we have to do the same thing for licensing. So we look in IIS for authentication and we enable anonymous authentication. Click on anonymous authentication and then click enable on the right hand side. Again, at this point, we have to sign out and sign back in again because we want to switch. We are now going to be logging in to the ADRMS server and we're going to create the Superusers group. This is a special group. This group is granted full permission and can decrypt any rights protected content. So we need to be really careful when we are granting membership to this group. We're going to open the Active Directory Rights Management snapping. And from this snapping, we're going to be able to change all the configuration settings. We're going to access the Superusers group by expanding security policies and clicking on Superusers. Superusers is turned off by default. And we are going to create the Superusers group, but first we have to enable Superusers. And then we have to actually browse for the Superusers group that we had created on the domain controller. So we're going to type that ADRM underscore superusers, and we're going to set that group as the superusers group. Click on OK. You need to spell that name correctly. Let's try again. Advanced. Find now. And we're going to find it and we're going to click on it. It's the first one in the list. Say OK. OK again. Apply. And OK. So you can see that the superusers group is now added.